Hey guys, it's Josh here with Porter Valley Ranch for Hobby Farms Magazine, and today we're going to talk about our winter feeding schedule for sheep and goats. So if you raise small ruminant animals, which would be sheep and goats like we do, you know that there are a couple different seasons when it comes to feeding your animals. The feeding seasons actually follow the normal seasons. So going through the summer, hopefully you've got a lot of grass. You can do rotational grazing, you can do different methods, but for the most part, we just let our animals out. They eat the grass in the fields, they eat the leaves in the woods, and they are pretty good to go. They don't require a lot as long as we're giving them a little bit of water. We feed them every once in a while, make sure they have hay available. If they really don't mess with it, because they would always rather stay on that green stuff. Now going into the fall, you are looking at needing to flush your ewes. Now this is a method by which you up their protein levels. You give them a little bit more grain, you give them a little bit more feed. And the theory is that whenever they're a little more healthy, whenever they have a little spare nutrition, that it ups their reproductive program and it leads to producing triplets or twins as opposed to just singles. So we do that here, we give them a little bit more grain as we go through the fall months. We're now in the season, which is between fall and winter. Hopefully your animals have either been bred or they are being bred. Now, once you get past that stage, they're getting into the first and second trimesters of their pregnancy. In the first and second trimesters, you don't actually want them to put on weight. Hopefully you follow the body condition score testing going into breeding, which you want them to be a 3.5. You don't want them to be too thin, which would be down in the 1s and 2s, and you don't want them to be too obese, which would be up in your 4s and 5s. You want them to be around that 3. There's a lot of videos available. There's an article on Hobby Farms about scoring your animals and their body condition. So make sure if you don't know what that means, make sure you look into that. But once you get your animals to about a 3.5, you want to keep them there through that first and second trimester of pregnancy. So you're feeding them what you call a maintenance dose. Now, maintenance for us here at Porter Valley Ranch means that we feed a lot of hay. We also have a lot of trees, which means it drops a lot of leaves. Sheep and goats both eat leaves. It's another form of browse. But whenever they're eating those leaves and when they're eating hay, you number one want to make sure that they have a lot of water. Now, no, our sheep and goats don't drink bottled water, but for example purposes, this is the water bottle that I have. You want to make sure they've got a lot of water. When they're on grass, they're not going to drink as much water because they're getting a lot of moisture out of that food. But whenever they switch over to just dry products, being that browse, those leaves, that hay, they're going to need a lot of water. So make sure they have fresh, clean water available at all times. The other thing we do here at Porter Valley Ranch is we give a supplementation. So we use these feed blocks or these lick tubs. Now you want to make sure, depending on what you're raising, that you're using the right kind of block. We use these sheep blocks, which have no copper added to them. There are also very low levels of phosphorus. Phosphorus is something that can create urinary calculi, and copper is something that will kill a sheep if they have too much of it. Now, goats, on the other hand, will use these protein pails. So these pails are specifically tailored to goats, and they have copper in them. Goats require high amounts of copper, and high amounts of copper for goats also help them keep away the intestinal parasites. So whether you have the sheep or the goats or both, you always want to offer a free choice mineral. We prefer loose minerals because anytime they're chewing on a block, it has the possibility of hurting their teeth. So especially if you have an older herd or an older flock, you probably want to go with the loose minerals as opposed to a mineral block. Now this protein block is pretty soft, but those mineral blocks or salt blocks, they are hard as a rock, literally, and they could really do some damage to those sheep and goats' mouths. So if you're looking for my recommendation, I recommend doing the loose minerals. It's the safest way to go. In addition to these products we just talked about, we always offer a large quantity of hay. We use like a horse quality hay or prairie hay going through the maintenance load, and we offer it free choice. Now, some people don't do free choice hay, and if you're gonna feed hay in the square bales and give it to them, then they need about 1 flake per head per day. So you can measure your hay out, or you can offer it to them free choice like we do. That's up to you. Check with your local veterinarian and make sure, depending on what kind of breed you have and what area you're in, what would be best for your herd. Now, depending on your breeding schedule, coming out of the first and second trimesters going into the third trimester of pregnancy you're going to need to up the nutrition, but not too much. You need to be careful. So that's when we're gonna start introducing a little bit more grain into their diet, because the fetus is gonna grow a whole lot during that last trimester. Also, you're getting ready for lactation. So we're gonna up that protein through feed, through grain, going into the third trimester, but you still have to be very aware of that body score because you don't want them to get too fat. If those sheep, if those goats get obese during the third trimester, then it really creates a lot of complications for them whenever they're going into their kidding and lambing processes. So the main thing I can say is that you wanna make sure you have minerals, you wanna make sure you're adding some supplementation. They need tons of hay, tons of browse, lots of water, and make sure that you're checking with your local veterinarian on what you should do specifically to your breed on your farm in your area.
Come on, Rupert. Hey, come here.